Welcome to your Get That Nugget for GCSE English Language. Today we'll be concentrating on giving you a framework to answer Paper 2 Question 4, the comparison question. This session is to complement your lessons with your teachers and not to replace them in any way. So in the previous nugget we looked at how we planned a response, and I reminded you of our what, how, why approach and our golden 3 rule. What I want us to do in this nugget is we're going to look at how we then take our planning and how we turn that into a response. Before we do that though, I think it's important that we have a look at the mark scheme. Now, as you know, we're aiming for level 3 and it's the same consistent wording. So we want that clear, relevant response to the question so that we can get those marks and get that secure response we're looking for. So we need to make sure we show a clear understanding of the differences in the ideas and perspectives, that we compare the ideas and perspectives in a clear, relevant way, that we explain clearly how the methods are used, and we select relevant quotations. So we need to make sure in our response we're doing all of these things, and then we'll write a response and then we'll come back to this and see how we got on, and I'll show you how in the response that links to our mark scheme. So I'm going to turn our notes from the previous nugget into a response, and I'll talk you through each part and how that then links back to what we want to do. So as you know, we already started the response in the previous cohort of nuggets. So we had quite a basic answer. It covered all the points, but this I want to make sure we develop further. So the way that I'm going to write the paragraph is not the start of the answer, but a continuation. And obviously I can't write in a full answer with you, but I'm going to show you a comparison. So there'll be 2 paragraphs, but then you will be able to see the approach to what we need to do. So let's start off quite simple. We're going to start with the obviously source A, but we're going to start with the writer. We don't want to overcomplicate it. We just want to give our response. So the writer in source A explores his confusion of the way he has discovered how people live. Nice and simple statement, nothing too complicated there, but something that we can work with. So discovered how people live. Now we're going to use a quote. So in search of food. So this is the quote we annotated in analyse in the previous nugget. In search of food, they are forced to wander endlessly. Okay, nice and simple, like I said, the quote we annotated before. So we just now need to work on that quote a little bit more. So we need to pull that quote apart and do our analysis. So we also made notes that the adverb endlessly and the verb, because we picked both out if you remember, and the verb forced conveys how much the writer is expressing his disbelief at how the people live. Okay, nice and simple, but we don't just want simple, we want secure. So we need to explain it a little bit more to make sure we're really clear about his attitude, but also answering the question. So we're going with the people live, but I want to add more. So he has discovered that people there do not live as he is used to. He also shows no sympathy for them. Again, showing his attitude to his discovery is more negative rather than joy. So very, very simple, but secure. And that's the difference. If we wanted to keep it simple, we would have taken the last part off. But we don't want just simple anymore, we want secure. So we need to make sure we're explaining as much as possible. The only thing I would probably add is we can add just a little bit as a reader. So as a reader, we do not feel sympathy due to the way he has previously described him, because he's been quite rude, isn't he? He's been quite judgmental, but we don't need to go into too much detail about that, because it's about him and his attitudes and what that shows, what methods have been used to show that. So that's a good kind of starting point. But obviously, because we have to do a comparison, we then have to do the same for source B. But before we get there, I want us to make sure that we are ticking off what we need to tick off. So have we shown a clear understanding? Yes, we haven't done differences yet, but we've got a clear understanding of source A. Have we explained how the method is used to convey ideas? Yes, we have already. And then we've used quotes. But now, obviously, because it's a comparison, as I said, we can't be in here yet because we haven't written the second paragraph. We haven't written the comparison. So it's good to know we're on the right track, but we need to make sure we're secure here. So we need to write the second paragraph, okay? So what we need to do is we need to remember our annotations from our second sheet. So if you remember our second sheet, we were looking at source B, we were looking at the anxious expectations. And that's an important thing to remember, because otherwise you're going to get lost in source A. So it's a comparison, so we need to use comparison words, and we're going to use whereas. So nice and clear to signpost to our examiner, we are actually comparing. So whereas in source B, the writer is nervous at his discoveries, but not in a negative way. So I have said really clearly a difference. So yes, just because I use whereas doesn't mean I'm going to get a mark for that, but what I have done is been really clear about the differences, that he's nervous at his discoveries, but it's not in a negative way, whereas obviously in source A it was a negative way. Then I'm going to have my quote. I've got quite a short quote for this one. Again, you can use more than one quote, it's fine, but for this, the purpose of this paragraph, I'm just going to use one, just because otherwise I'm going to run out of time. The writer is eager to see what his discovery is, which allows the audience to also be intrigued. And that's quite important, that's quite effective, isn't it? The way that he's intrigued and his excitement is very infectious to a reader, and that makes the reader more intrigued and excited to what they've done. Is also to be intrigued and excited, we might as well use those words because that's what we've put in our notes anyway. There is no sense of foreboding. So whereas in source A, we don't know what's going to happen next, but we also don't want to know what happens next. Whereas in source B, we're in that excited mood with the writer, so we don't feel like there's anything negative coming. So and you can write that, that's absolutely fine. So there is no sense of foreboding, but a sense of excitement, which is successfully. Remember, we did that on paper 1 question 4, so we were talking about how the writer successfully did things, and we can use that here as well. We're not evaluating, it's a different skill, but we can still talk about what the writer has used because we have to. We can also talk about the effect of that. A sense of excitement which is successfully portrayed by the writer. Okay, then we just need to analyse those choice of words, those choice of ellipsis. So you would then go on to say the word anxious, maybe you'll talk about anticipation, maybe you'll look at the nerves and the use of ellipsis, and shows that something's going to happen, that it's excited to be revealed, but it all reiterates the fact that he is nervous and excited about his discovery, which is very different to this one. So now we've got a full paragraph-ish. I haven't quite finished here, but we've got the bones of it. let's have a look at our mark scheme. So, have we shown a clear understanding of the differences between ideas and perspectives? Yes, we have, because we've talked about how there's no sense of foreboding, successfully portrayed with excitement. We've talked about whereas the writer in source B is nervous at his discoveries, but not in a negative way. We've also talked about the idea of the thought of source A, where he's confused, he's quite negative, he's got a negative attitude. So we have done that. Compares ideas and perspectives in a clear and relevant way. That is clear and relevant. We've referred to the question, we've been really clear about our response, and we've compared the ideas. Explains clearly how methods are used to convey ideas and perspectives. So yes, we've done that here. We were starting to do that here, and if I'd finished the paragraph, you would obviously have written about the word anxious, and you would have also written about the ellipsis, and that would have been our methods explained clearly. And then it selects relevant quotations. So yes, we have done all of those things, which means we have to be in that section of the mark scheme, which means we would be secure response. Now, of course, as I've said throughout all of these nuggets, this is just a part of the answer. You would need to write a full answer to make sure that we're in that secure zone. But if you write it like this, you're going to be in that level 3, if not into level 4. Level 3 is where we're aiming for. This would get us into level 3. But again, you would need to write a full response to be able to get into that level and to make sure that you're secure into that level. So what I would do is make sure you're practicing this question and take your annotations from last time, from your last nugget that you gave to your teacher, and then start now putting together a response to that practice question that we looked at. So this was our practice question. Compare how the two writers convey their different attitudes towards the scenes they describe. And if you plan, finish your plan, start turning it into the paragraphs. And if you give that to your teacher, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to mark it and give you some feedback on your paper 2 question 4 response.